Good morning. Today we will start with fundamentals of convection. So far we have considered conduction, which is the mechanism of heat transfer through the solid or fluid. We now consider convection, which is the mechanism of heat transfer through a fluid in presence of bulk fluid motion. Convection is classified natural and forced convection depending on how fluid motion is initiated. In forced convection, the fluid is forced to flow over the surface in a pipe by external means such as pump or fan. In natural convection, any fluid motion is caused by natural means such as buoyancy effects. Convection is also classified external and internal depending on whether the fluid is forced to flow over the surface or in a pipe or channel. We start this chapter with the discussion of mechanism of convection. We discuss velocity and thermal boundary layer, laminar and turbulent flows. Then we discuss dimensional number, Knoll number, Prandtl number and Nusselt numbers. You can see here, this is a forced convection. This is a natural convection due to the buoyancy effect, density difference of the gravity. So conduction and convection are similar in that both mechanisms require the presence of material medium. In the case of radiation, we don't need medium. Heat transfer through a solid is always by conduction, since the molecules of solid remain at a relatively fixed position. However, heat transfer through a liquid or gas, however, can be by conduction or convection depending on the presence of any bulk fluid motion. If the fluid is moving, it is convection. If its fluid is at still position, then heat transfer may be by conduction. Heat transfer through a fluid is by convection in the presence of bulk fluid motion and by conduction in the absence of it. Therefore, conduction in a fluid can be viewed as the limiting case of convection. Convection heat transfer is complicated by the fact it involves fluid motion as well as heat conduction. The fluid motion enhances heat transfer since it brings hotter and cooler chunks of fluid into contact, initiating higher rates of conduction at a greater number of sites in the fluid. Therefore, the rate of heat transfer through a fluid is much higher by convection than it is by conduction. Consider two parallel plates here. This is hot plate. This is called cold plate. The temperature of fluid and the plate will be the same at the points of contact. At this point, fluid and temperature is same as the of plate, and at this point fluid temperature is same as the temperature of this plate. Assuming no fluid motion, if there is fluid is still, the energy of hotter fluid molecules near the hot plate will be transferred to adjacent cooler fluid molecules. So energy will transfer to the adjacent layer, then it will propagate to the next layer, and this way heat will transfer from the hot plate to cold plate if the fluid is still. So this energy will be transferred to the next layer of cooler fluid molecules. This energy will then be transferred to the next layer and so on until finally transferred to the next, or you can say other plate. This is what happens during conduction through the fluid. Now we will take another example here. We will take the fluid by syringe from here directly, which is at high temperature, and we will transfer this fluid manually to this side, which is at the lower temperature. So this is what happened during convection. Means your fluid will actually transfer from here to here, and it will carry the energy from this place to this place. So this is the convection here. So this process of carrying fluid from here to here manually, or you can say if you carry the fluid from this point to this point, will speed up the heat transfer process. Take another example. This is hot iron block. Now heat is transferred from this hot iron block to the air. We also know if we use a fan and if you use high velocity air, then the heat transfer will at faster rate and block will cooled at a faster rate. So this is the velocity of air and temperature of air, and if you replace this air with a cooling water, then even heat transfer will be at a faster rate. It means here energy is carried by air itself due to the fluid motion. Air is moving and it will carry the energy. So it is a case of convection, and convection heat transfer depends on fluid properties, its dynamic viscosity, thermal conductivity K, density and specific heat, as well as fluid velocity V. So it also depends on geometry and roughness of the solid surface. So it means convection heat transfer relations are rather complex because of dependence of convection on so many variables. That is not surprising since convection is the most complex mechanism of heat transfer. But we can simplify with the help of Newton's law of cooling, which is heat transfer during convection is equal to H into Ts minus T infinity, or overall heat transfer is equal to, this is the your heat transfer per unit area, this is total heat transfer, is equal to H into As is the surface area into Ts, which is surface temperature, which is 400 in this case, and T infinity, which is air temperature. So this is in case of convection. So if you check the units of convection heat transfer coefficient, that is watt per meter square degree Celsius. It means convection can be defined as the rate of heat transfer between a solid surface and a fluid per unit surface area per unit temperature difference. So when fluid is forced to flow over a solid surface that is non-porous, it is observed that the fluid in motion comes to a complete stop at the surface and assumes zero velocity related to the surface. So this point, this is called no slip condition, where your velocity of the fluid is zero. The no slip condition is responsive for development of the velocity profile for the flow because of friction between the fluid layers, and the layer that sticks to the wall slows the adjacent layer. This layer slows this layer, and this layer will slow down this layer. So a consequence of no slip condition is that all velocity profile must have zero velocities at the point of contact between fluid and solid. So it means wherever the fluid is in contact with the solid surface, so there is zero velocity at this surface, and then the velocity start to increase. So at this point the velocity will approach to uniform velocity. So when two bodies come into contact, say fluid is in contact with a solid body, the heat transfer will occur until this fluid will reach at the same temperature. So this is known as no temperature ejection. So implication of no slip and no temperature jump condition is that heat transfer from solid surface to the fluid layer adjacent to the surface is by pure conduction. It means this solid surface and the layer which is adjacent, their heat transfer is by pure conduction. So you can say that convection at the surface is equal to conduction, which is equal to this. So create this equation with this conduction equation. So here y is 0, it means it is for those surface which is just adjacent to this solid block, and del T by del y is the temperature gradient at the surface. This is your convection heat transfer coefficient when temperature distribution within the fluid is known. The convection heat transfer coefficient in general varies along the flow, means it will vary along this flow. There H is different as compared to H as the surface. Also your convective heat transfer will vary along the x direction along the flow. At this point H is different as compared to this point and this point. So along the flow it will vary also. Nusselt number. In convection studies, it is common practice to non-dimensionalize the governing equations and combine the variables which group together into dimensionless number in order to reduce the number of total variables. It is also common practice to non-dimensionalize the heat transfer coefficient H with the Nusselt number. So Nusselt number is equal to H into LC by K, where LC is the characteristic length. The Nusselt number is named after William Nusselt, who made significant contribution to convection heat transfer. So it is dimensionless number. To understand the physical significance of Nusselt number, consider a fluid layer of thickness L, and temperature difference across this layer is del T, which is T2 minus T1. Heat transfer through the fluid layer will be by convection when the fluid involves some motion, and by conduction when the fluid layer is motionless. So heat flux we can write as, that is Q convection is equal to H into del T when there is a convection, and when there is a conduction then heat flux conduction is equal to K into del T by L. So take this ratio of this convection and conduction, you will get H del T by K del T by L, which is HL by K. Now this is your Nusselt number. It means Nusselt number is the ratio of heat flux during convection to the heat flux during conduction. Therefore, Nusselt number represents the enhancement of heat transfer through a fluid layer as a result of convection relative to conduction across the same fluid layer. The larger the Nusselt number, the more effective the convection. A Nusselt number of 1 for a fluid layer represents heat transfer across the layer by pure conduction. Means if Nusselt number is 1, then there is no convection, there is only conduction. Classification of fluid flow. There are different types of classification: viscous versus inviscous flow. When two fluid layers move related to each other, a friction force develops between them and the slower layer tries to slow down the faster layer. This internal resistance to flow is called viscosity, which is measure of internal stiffness of the fluid. Viscosity is caused by cohesive forces between the molecules in liquids and by molecular collisions in gases. There is no fluid with zero viscosity, and thus all fluid flow involve viscous effects. But where viscosity is zero, the fluids are called frictionless or inviscous fluids. Internal versus external flow. A fluid is classified as being internal and external depending on whether the fluid is forced to flow in a confined channel or it is over a surface. The flow of an unbounded fluid over a surface such as plate, wire or pipe is external flow, and flow of a flow in a pipe or duct is called internal flow. Compressible versus incompressible. A fluid flow is classified as being compressible or incompressible depending on the density variation. For liquid, the density variation is very small. A pressure of 210 atmosphere, for example, will cause a density of liquid water at 1 atmosphere to change by just 1%. While gases on the other hand are highly compressible. In case of gas, a pressure change of 0.01 atmosphere will cause 1% change in density of atmospheric air. However, gas flows can be treated as incompressible if the density change are under 5%, which is usually the case when the flow velocity is less than 30% of the velocity of sound. So it means if the flow velocity is under 100 meter per second, so then flow can be considered as incompressible. Laminar versus turbulent flow. Some flows are smooth and orderly while others are rather chaotic. The highly ordered fluid motion characterized by smooth streamlines is called laminar. The flow of high viscosity fluids such as oil at low velocity is laminar, while highly disordered fluid motion typically occur at high velocity is called turbulent flow. Natural versus forced flow. In forced flow, a fluid is forced to flow over a surface in a pipe by external means such as pump or fan. In natural flow, you can see here, in this case, the thermosiphoning effect is commonly used to replace pump in solar water heating system. So cold water will go down. In solar system, it will heat it up. Due to the density difference, the water will become lighter. It will go upward direction. It will go to this is hot water supply. So this is your thermosiphoning effect. This phenomena we also use in case of electroless refrigeration. Steady versus unsteady flow. The terms steady and uniform are used frequently in engineering, and thus it is important to have a clear understanding. The term steady implies no change with time. The opposite is unsteady, means transient. So many devices such as turbines, compressor, boiler, condenser and heat exchanger operate for long periods of time under the same condition, and they can be classified as steady flow devices. One dimensional, two and three dimensional. A flow field is best characterized by velocity distribution, and thus a flow is said to be 1, 2 and 3 if the flow velocity varies in 1, 2 and 3 primary dimensions. So you can represent velocity y in terms of x, y, z in rectangular and in r, theta, z in cylindrical coordinates. So you can see in the pipe, this is the velocity profile at this point and this is the velocity profile at this point. So velocity profile remains unchanged. So when the entrance effects are disregarded, fluid flow in a circular pipe is one dimensional since the velocity varies in radial direction. So only radial direction velocity varies and not vary along the angular or axial z direction. That is, the velocity profile is same at any axial z location. Velocity boundary layer. Consider the parallel flow of fluid over a flat plate. So this is your flat plate here, and the fluid is flowing parallel to this plate with the velocity v. Turbine blades can also be approximated as flat plates with reasonable accuracy. The x-coordinate is measured along the plate surface from the leading edge of the plate in the direction of the flow. This is your leading edge of the plate and this is the x direction. It is measured along the plate. So y is measures along this from the surface along the normal direction. The fluid approaches the plate in x direction with a uniform upstream velocity of v, which is practically identical to the free velocity u infinity. We consider the fluid to consist of adjacent layers piled on each other. The velocity of particles in the first fluid layer, that is adjacent to the plate, becomes zero because of no slip condition. So this motionless layer slows down the particles of the neighboring layer as a result of friction between the particles of these two adjoining fluid layers at different velocities. So this layer then slows down the molecules of the next layer and so on. So here you can see velocity 0. The velocity of this layer is less because of friction between this layer and this layer. So thus the presence of plate is felt up to some normal distance, say delta. So this is the delta distance from the plate, beyond which the free stream velocity u infinity remains unchanged. So above this distance here, the velocity is same as the free stream velocity. So as a result, the x component of fluid velocity u will vary from 0 at y is equal to 0. Means the direction in this direction velocity is 0 when your y is 0, and it will approach to the u infinity when your y is delta. Means when you go in this y direction, when your y, this component is delta, then your velocity will become u infinity. So velocity will vary from 0 to u infinity, while your y will vary from 0 to delta. This delta is called boundary layer thickness. The region of flow above the plate bounded by delta, this region in which the viscous shearing forces caused by fluid viscosity are felt, is called velocity boundary layer. So this region is called velocity boundary layer. The boundary layer thickness delta is typically defined as the distance y from the surface at which u is equal to 0.99 of u infinity. Means this layer, this distance is up to point where your velocity of the fluid is equal to 0.99 time of the free stream velocity of the fluid. So this is defined delta, which is 0.1990 velocity of the free stream velocity. So this region is called, up to at this point is called delta, and this region where there is velocity same, free stream velocity is same as this velocity, this region is above the boundary layer region. So this region is called in viscous flow region, where frictional effects are negligible above this boundary layer. Surface shear stress. Consider the flow of a fluid over the surface of plate. The fluid layer is contact with the surface will try to drag the plate along by friction, exerting a friction force on it. Faster fluid layer will try to drag the adjacent slower layer and exert a friction force because of the friction between the two layers. Friction force per unit area is called shear stress, which is noted by tau. Experimental study indicate that shear stress for more fluid is proportional to the velocity gradient. Stress is proportional to this velocity gradient del u by del y when your y is 0, and a constant proportionally is called mu, is called dynamic viscosity. The fluid which will follow this relation are called Newtonian fluid, and which won't follow are called non-Newtonian fluid. Air, water are Newtonian fluid, while plastics and blood are non-Newtonian fluids. In heat transfer studies and fluid flow, the ratio of dynamic viscosity to the density of fluid is called kinematic viscosity, which is here. The viscosity of fluid is a measure of resistance to flow and it is a strong function of temperature. Liquids viscosity will decrease with increase in temperature, while gases viscosity will increase with temperature. This is dynamic viscosity of some fluids at 20 degrees Celsius for different fluids. So it is not possible sometimes to find the shear stress from this relation. We use a different relation also, which is this one, Cf density V square by 2. Here shear stress depends on the density velocity of the fluid, where Cf is the dimensionless friction coefficient, whose value is most cases determined experimentally. Once the average friction coefficient over a given surface is available, the friction force over the entire surface is determined. So force is equal to, if you multiply with this shear stress with the area, you will get friction force. The friction coefficient is an important parameter in heat transfer studies, since it is directly related to heat transfer coefficient and the power requirement of pump or a fan. Thermal boundary layer. We have seen that the velocity boundary layer develops when a fluid flows over a surface as a result of fluid layer adjacent to the surface, assuming the surface velocity, it means zero velocity related to the surface. Also, we define velocity boundary layer as a region in which the fluid velocity varies from 0 to 0.99 u infinity. So this region, which is pink here. Likewise, thermal boundary layer develops when a fluid at a specified temperature flows over a surface that is at different temperature. Means this is your fluid here, which is flowing with T infinity as the temperature of the fluid. This is your surface. Consider the flow of a fluid at a uniform temperature T infinity over an isothermal surface, flat plate, at a temperature Ts. The fluid particles in the layer adjacent to the surface will reach thermal equilibrium with the plate and assume the surface temperature Ts. Means this layer, which is adjacent to this plate, has temperature of Ts. These fluid particles will then exchange energy with the particles in the adjoining fluid layer and so on. So the heat is transferred. As a result, a temperature profile will develop in the flow field that ranges from Ts at the surface to T infinity sufficiently far from the surface. Ts here, and as you go on in upward direction, this will reach to T infinity. So the flow region over the surface in which temperature variation in the direction normal to surface is significant is called thermal boundary layer. So this region where your temperature variation is significant, this is called thermal boundary region layer, and above this region the temperature is as the free stream, that is T infinity. The thickness of thermal boundary layer delta T at any location along the surface is defined as the distance from the surface at which T minus Ts equals to 0.99 T infinity minus Ts. Note that for the special case when Ts is equal to 0, T is equal to 0.99 T infinity at the outer edge of the thermal boundary layer at this place, which is analogous to U is equal to 0.99 U infinity for the velocity boundary layer. The thickness of thermal boundary layer increases in the flow direction. You can see here it is less. As you go along the flow, this thickness will increase. Since the effects of heat transfer are felt at a greater distance from the surface further downstreams. The convection heat transfer rate anywhere along the surface is directly proportional to the temperature gradient at that location. Therefore, shape of the temperature profile in the thermal boundary layer dictates the convection heat transfer between solid surface and fluid flowing over it. In a flow over a heated surface, both velocity and thermal boundary layer will develop simultaneously. Prandtl number. The relative thickness of viscosity and the thermal boundary layer is best described by dimensionless number, Prandtl number, which is ratio of molecular diffusivity of momentum to molecular diffusivity of heat, or kinematic viscosity divided by thermal diffusivity. When you solve it, you will get mu Cp upon K. The Prandtl number for fluid range from 0.01 for liquid metals to more than 1 lakh for heavy oils. Note that Prandtl number for water is the order of 10. The Prandtl number of gases are about 1, which indicates that both momentum and heat dissipate through the fluid at about the same rate. Heat diffuses very quickly in liquid metals and very slowly in oils relative to momentum. Consequently, the thermal boundary layer is much thicker for liquid metals and much thinner for oils relative to the velocity boundary layer. Laminar turbulent flow. You have seen around smokers. You probably noticed that cigarette smoke rises in a smooth manner for the first few centimeters and then start to fluctuate. So likewise, a careful inspection of flow in a pipe reveals that fluid flow is streamlined at low velocities but turns cohetic as the velocity increases above a critical value. So this is your flow in the pipeline. So the transition from laminar to turbulent flow does not occur suddenly. Rather, it occurs over some region in which the flow fluctuates between laminar and turbulent flow before it becomes fully turbulent. So this is here you have the laminar flow, this is turbulent flow. By injecting a dye, you can track the type of flow. This you can see, this is fully developed laminar flow. In this case, when you inject dye, the particle will go in this form, zigzag manner, and this is turbulent flow. So we can verify existence of these laminar transition turbulent flow regimes by injecting some dye streak into the flow in a glass tube. We will observe that the dye streak will form a straight and smooth line at low velocities when the flow is laminar and will burst of fluctuations in the transition region and will zigzag rapidly and randomly when the flow becomes fully turbulent. So typical velocity profile in laminar turbulent flow are also explained earlier. You can see here, this layer is your laminar boundary layer. This is transition region, and then you have turbulent boundary layer. So the velocity profile in this laminar boundary layer region is parabolic and becomes flatter in case of turbulent region. The turbulent boundary layer can be considered to consist of 3 layers. The very thin layer next to the wall where the viscous factors are dominant is a laminar sublayer. So within the turbulent boundary layer, this is your laminar sublayer where viscous factors are dominant. Then you have buffer layer and then you have turbulent layer. In buffer layer, turbulent effects are significant but not dominant of the diffusion effects. And in turbulent layer, in which the turbulent effects are dominant, is the third layer. The intense mixing of fluid in turbulent flow as a result of rapid fluctuations enhances heat and momentum transfer between fluid particles, which increase the friction force on the surface and the convection heat transfer rate. It also causes the boundary layer to enlarge. Both friction and heat transfer coefficient reach maximum values when the flows become fully turbulent. Reynolds number. The transition from laminar to turbulent flow depends on surface geometry, surface roughness, free stream velocity, surface temperature and type of fluid, among other things. After experiments, Reynolds discovered that flow regime depends mainly on the ratio of inertia forces to viscous forces in fluid. This ratio is called Reynolds number, which is dimensionless quantity. It is the ratio of inertia forces to viscous force, where V is the upstream velocity equivalent to the free velocity u infinity for a flat plate. This V is the upstream velocity. LC is the characteristic length of the geometry and mu is your, this V is your the kinematic viscosity of the fluid. For a flat plate, the characteristic length is the distance x from the leading edge. This is your characteristic length in case of flat plate. The kinematic viscosity has the unit of meter square per second, which is identical to unit of thermal diffusivity and can be viewed as viscous diffusivity or diffusivity of form momentum. When roll number is large, it means inertia forces which are proportional to density and velocity of fluid are large relative to viscous forces, and thus viscous forces cannot prevent the random and relative fluctuations of the fluid. At small roll numbers, however, the viscous forces are large. When your roll number is small, it means viscous force is large and enough to overcome the inertia forces and keep the fluid in line. Thus, flow is turbulent in the first case and laminar in the second case. Means when your roll number is large, flow is turbulent. When your roll number is less, then your flow is laminar. The Knoll number at which the flow becomes turbulent is called critical Knoll number. The value of critical Knoll number is different for different geometries. For flow over a flat plate, the journey accepted value for critical Knoll number is 5 into 10⁵, where xCr, x critical is the distance from the leading edge of the plate at which transition from laminar to turbulent flow occurs. So from this plate at the initial point at the plate starting, when you go to this x critical distance, there your flow will start to convert from laminar to turbulent. So this is called x critical. Derivation of differential convection equations. In this section we will derive the governing equations of fluid flow in boundary layers. To keep the analysis at a manageable level, we assume the flow to be steady and two-dimensional and the fluid to be Newtonian with the constant properties. Density, viscosity, thermoconductivity are constant. Consider the parallel flow of a fluid over a surface. We take the flow direction along the surface to be x and the direction normal to the surface to be y, and we choose a differential volume element of dx, length and height dy, and unit depth in the z direction. The fluid flow over the surface with a uniform free stream velocity u infinity, but the velocity within the boundary layer is two-dimensional. The x component of the velocity is u and the y component of the velocity is v. Note that u is a function of xy and v is a function of xy in steady two-dimensional flow. Next we apply three fundamental laws to this fluid element. First is the conservation of mass, then we apply conservation of momentum on this element, then we apply conservation of energy for laminar flow in boundary layers. Conservation of mass equation. In steady flow, it states that rate of mass flow into the control volume means this plus this is equal to rate of mass flow out of the control volume. This plus this must be equal to this plus this. Now mass rate is equal to the product of density, mean velocity and cross section area normal to the flow. So mass rate here is your density into velocity into cross section area which is perpendicular to the direction of flow. So area which is perpendicular to direction of flow is your dy into 1. In z direction it is 1 and y direction it is dy. So this component multiply by depth component which is z here, which is equal to 1. So this is the mass rate from the left side into this control volume, and the rate at which fluid leaves the control volume from the right side can be expressed as, while at this side your velocity of fluid is equal to u plus del u by del x into dx. So this is the velocity. Multiply this velocity with the cross section area and density, you will get mass flow rate, which is this density into velocity into area of cross section perpendicular to the direction of flow. Now this is for x direction, do it for y direction and submit all the values in this equation. You will get this equation This is mass rate into the control volume. This is mass rate out of control volume. On solving, you will get this equation. You have to divide this by dx dy into 1, which is the volume of the element. You will get this equation. This is the conservation of mass relation, also known as continuity equation or mass balance for steady two-dimensional flow of fluid with constant density. Conservation of momentum equations. The differential forms of equations of motion in velocity boundary layer are obtained by applying Newton's second law of motion to differential control volume element in boundary layer. Newton's second law is an expression for conservation of momentum. The net force acting on a control volume is equal to the mass times the acceleration of the fluid element within control volume, which is also equal to the net rate of momentum outflow from the control volume. The force acting on a control volume consists of body force that act throughout the entire body of control volume, such as gravity, and proportional to the volume of body, and surface forces that act on control volume, such as pressure force due to hydrostatic pressure and shear stress due to viscous force. So this is your pressure force in this direction, and this is your pressure force from this direction, and this is your shear force at this surface and this surface. The surface forces appear as the control volume is isolated from its surrounding for analysis, and the effect of detached body is replaced by force at that location. So this is Newton's second law of motion. Mass into acceleration in satisfied direction is equal to net force acting in that direction. So it is mass is del m, acceleration is ax, force is surface force, body force is the force due to gravity. This is the volume of element. Dx, dy and unit depth 1. Flow is steady and two-dimensional. So u is equal to ux comma y. When you take derivative of u, you will get del u by del x dx plus del u by del y dy, which is differential form. When you take derivative of du with respect to time, you will get acceleration. So del u by del x into dx by dt. This term dx by dt is again your u, and this term dy by dt is your v. So you may think that acceleration is 0 in steady flow. This is not the case. You can take the example of a nozzle. This is the steady flow equation. Here in case mass rate is same, but as the fluid has to pass from this restricted space, it will accelerate and velocity will change. So steady simply means no change with the time at a specified location, and thus del u by del t is 0. But the value of quantity may change from one location to another, and thus del u by del x, this quantity, and del u by del y may be different from 0. In the case of nozzle, the velocity of water remains constant at a specified point, but it changes from inlet to exit. We have calculated ax acceleration. Now we will find surface force. So surface force are due to pressure force and viscous effect in two-dimensional flow. So viscous stress at any point on imaginary surface within the fluid can be resolved into two perpendicular components. One normal to the surface called normal stress, which should not be confused with pressure. Another along the surface called shear stress. So this is your shear stress. Normal stress we had neglected because the normal stress is related to the velocity gradient del u by del x and del v by del y. So these things are neglected and much smaller as compared to del u by del y. So del u by del y is related to the shear stress. We can include this. So the net force, surface force acting in x direction becomes force surface in x direction is equal to, this is the, you can say, shear stress in this direction, this is shear stress in this direction. So difference of these two shear stress is equal to this component del tau by del y into dy multiply by area of surface. Now in this case area of surface is dx into 1 unit depth, which is dx into 1. Now if you take the difference of this force and this force, you will get this component del p by del x into dx. So del p by del x into dx multiply by this area which is perpendicular to this pressure, which is your dy into unit depth. So dy into unit depth. So on solving you will get this equation. Now we know from the expression that your shear stress is mu into del u by del y. So put this value of shear stress here. You will get this equation. Put 627 equation, that is surface force, and 626, that is acceleration in x direction, and 624, that is del m, into 623 equation, this equation. You will get this equation. This relation is for conservation of momentum in x direction and is known as x momentum equation. In boundary layer, the velocity component in the flow direction is much larger than in the normal direction. Means this u velocity is much greater than v, and del v by del x and del v by del y are negligible. So these two components are negligible. Also u varies greatly with y in the normal direction from 0 at the wall surface to nearly free stream value across the relatively thin boundary layer. So variation of u is from 0 at this wall surface to the free stream velocity at the boundary layer, while the variation of u with the x is typically small, means del u by del x is much less as compared to del u by del y. Similar way, if the fluid and the wall are at different temperature, the fluid is heated or cooled during flow. Heat conduction will occur primarily in the direction normal to the surface, and thus del t by del y, which is this gradient in the normal direction to the surface, is much greater than the del t by del x, which is this gradient. So this is your condition for temperature gradient. You can see velocity gradient and temperature gradient, which are normal to surface, are much greater than as compared to these two. So these all approximations are known as boundary layer approximations. These approximations greatly simplify the analysis, usually with little loss in accuracy. When gravity effect and other body forces are negligible, then boundary layer approximations are valid. Apply Newton's second law of motion on volumetric element in y direction, gives y momentum equation to 0. On this element, if you apply, the gravity force is neglected. If you apply the Newton's second law in y direction, then you will get this equation del p by del y is equal to 0, which means the pressure variation in the y direction is negligible. The variation of pressure in the direction normal to the surface is negligible, and thus pressure is a function of only x coordinate, means del p by del x partial is equal to dp by dx. Because in the y direction there is no variation of pressure, then it follows that for a given x, the pressure in the boundary layer is equal to the pressure in the free stream. Means whatever the pressure in the boundary layer, the same pressure you will get in the free stream, whether at this point, if you even here, whatever the pressure within the boundary layer, if you move in the y coordinate in the above direction in the free stream, you will get the same pressure. Now take this equation and apply this equation for free stream. Above this boundary layer, this is your free stream. In free stream of flat plate, u is equal to u infinity, which is constant. If u is constant in free stream, then variation of u with respect to x and variation of u with respect to y is 0, means this component is 0. So this component again becomes 0. So del p by del x become is equal to 0, which means flow over a flat plate, the pressure remains constant over the entire plate, both inside and outside the boundary layer. Conservation of energy equation. The energy balance for any system undergoing any process is expressed as E in minus E out is equal to change in energy of system. which state that the change in energy content of a system during a process is equal to difference between the energy input and energy output. During a steady flow process, the total energy content of a control volume remains constant and del system is 0. And the amount of energy entering the control volume in all forms must be equal to the amount of energy leaving it. Then the rate form of energy equation reduces to steady flow process, that is energy rate in minus energy rate out is equal to 0. We have energy in the form of heat, in the form of work, and energy is also carried in the form of by mass. The energy can be transferred by heat, work and mass only. The energy balance for steady flow control volume can be written as this. The total energy of flowing fluid stream per unit mass is equal to E stream is equal to enthalpy plus kinetic plus potential, where H is your enthalpy. Potential energy is Z, kinetic energy is equal to V square by 2. In this case, we will take average. The kinetic and potential energy are usually very small and therefore in common practice we neglect them. After neglecting kinetic and potential, you will get E stream is equal to H. Now this is equal to Cp into T. So this is your control volume. Energy heat in the form of will come from this direction X. Energy heat out in the form of heat from this X direction. It will enter from this side, it will go from this out. Energy in the form of mass will come from this side in the form of it is carried by mass from this side. This is heat energy coming from y direction, heat energy leaving from y direction. Energy in the form of mass coming from y direction, energy in the form of mass leaving from y direction. First we will take this component E in minus E out by mass in x direction. At this interface, this is energy in by mass, that is m dot into E stream at x, minus at outlet it is m dot E stream x plus change of m dot E stream with respect to x into dx. These two terms will cancel out, you will get this term. Now here what is mass flow rate, that we know is mass rate in this direction is equal to velocity, that is u, multiply by area perpendicular to the direction, which is dy into unit in z direction, which is dy into 1 into cpt. So u will vary and t will vary. So when you take derivative with respect to x, you will get this equation, u into del t by del x plus by keeping t constant, taking derivative of u, del u by del x into dx dy. So this is energy in minus energy out by mass in x directions. So repeating the same in y direction, you will get this equation here. Now add this equation and this equation, you will get this, that is energy in and energy out by mass in this control volume. So you will get this equation. You know this component del u by del x and this component del v by del y is equal to 0. So this component del u by del x and del v by del y is equal to 0 from continuity equation. You are left with this term and this term. So this is your equation here. Same way you have to take heat conduction to the control volume in x direction, that is qx minus qx plus qx by del x into dx. Because heat is transferred in this direction, then heat is leaving from this direction. So difference of in minus out, you will get this equation. Put the value of q, which is minus k into area, which is perpendicular to the direction of heat transfer, which is in this case is dy into 1 del t by del x. When you take the derivative, you will get a second order because the temperature is varying. By keeping these quantities constant, you will get this equation in x direction. So repeat this again in y direction, you will get, and by addition you will get energy in minus energy out by heat. This is x direction, this is y direction. So this is total energy in minus out by heat. Now we are left with this term, which is energy in minus energy out by work. The work done by pressure is already accounted for in analysis above by using enthalpy. This enthalpy term include the work. Instead of energy, internal energy, we had taken enthalpy, that is H. H is equal to U plus PV. So work is included in this term. The shear stress that results from viscous effects are very small and can be neglected in many cases. So the energy equation for the steady two-dimensional flow of fluid with constant properties are negligible shear stress is obtained by substituting this equation and this equation into this equation. You will get this equation. This equation states that net energy convected, this energy by fluid out of control volume, is equal to net energy transferred into the control volume by heat conduction. When viscous shear stress are not negligible, their effect can be countered by expressing the energy equation as, so this coefficient for the viscous shear effect. So viscous shear dissipation function, this is obtained after lengthy analysis, which is equivalent to this. Viscous dissipation may play a dominant role in high speed flows, especially when the viscosity of fluid is high, like the flow of oil in journal bearing. For a special case of a stationary fluid, when U and V 0, by putting U and V 0 here, you will get this equation, and the energy equation reduces to, as expected, to steady two-dimensional heat conduction equation. This term becomes 0 and you will get this equation is equal to 0, which is same as in case of solid steady two-dimensional heat conduction equation.